Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Week 11 here at the Winter Equestrian Festival, and of course our WEF Weekly just about to get underway. Our Week 11, of course, is going to focus on quite a bit, including equitation and major jumper events here. Of course, there'll also be some hunters on the board going on throughout the week. I'm Brian Lookabill. Stephen Wild could not be with us here for the weekend, but I'm glad to be filling in for him, and glad to have an incredible week of competition coming to you. Of course, as I mentioned, equitation is going to take center stage as we get into the next couple of days here with the WEF Equitation Championship, and of course we'll also have some high-level jumpers coming at you as we get into the weekend here, including Meter 50 Classic competition and of course our Grand Prix taking place here this weekend. But glad to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to tell you all about it in detail as we get into this week's WEF Weekly, Week 11. Yes, indeed. So happy to be back at a beautiful location, of course, here in Wellington, Florida, and the sun is shining down on us as we get into the early evening hours. And of course, the WEF Weekly is when we talk about everything that's been taking place here throughout the circuit so far. And of course, we're in the late phases, and of course, what's going to be happening here going into competition here during Week 11. Do want to thank IDA Development for being our presenting sponsor here this week. And of course, also a thanks to Dodd Technologies, an industry leader in creative design and technology support services for sports, entertainment, corporate, and special events. And you can visit them online at doddtechnologies.com. And of course, our broadcast is presented in part with the support of U.S. Equestrian Federation and USEF Network. And we are glad to have all of you back here on the live set of the WEF Weekly broadcast. And again, I'm Brian Lookabill. We've got some great guests with us here this week. But before we get to them, we'd like to take a look at what took place during our Week 10 activities here on the tour. And of course, we've got dressage competition taking place, jumpers as well. Let's start off with the dressage. And of course, as you can see here, Friedrich Wondrus and Bluetooth, the winners of our Grand Prix Special, and the freestyle, Felicitas Hendricks and Drumbush. And there you have, of course, the great show jumping rider, McLean Ward. And that's a demonstration of his victory in the Challenge Cup that took place in the early week with First Lady. Bailey McKeever, of course, as you can see, trained by McLean, took top honors in the final of the Under 25 series brought to us by Brain Juice. And of course, that was the Grand Prix that happened here last week, winning aboard Formidable. And of course, when we got into the Saturday Night Lights performance, of course, Grand Prix winner there in the $215,000 Horseware of Ireland Grand Prix was Contagious. And we're going to have a lot more to talk about there in depth as we get into a little bit of a rundown of the actual Grand Prix itself and, of course, the Under 25 ranks. Before we get to that, though, we're glad to have some great guests with us and experts in their field, especially on a week like this where equitation is going to be such a big focus. So let's go ahead and talk about our guests, and we'll start off all the way to the left of the stage here, and the sports desk is Luke Jensen. Luke Jensen, back in 2022, of course, took top honors in the WEF Equitation Championship, and that's not all. Of course, he took a big win in the USEF Hunt Seat Medal Finals. He was also top contestant in last year's Talent Search Finals at the historic Gladstone showgrounds there, where our teams used to, of course, depart from to go to international competition. We also have with us, just to his right, of course, is Brianne Goutal-Marteau. She was the only winner in her time of all four of the Equitation Championships, and of course has gone on to ride internationally, has already had some success this season with Meter 50 wins here at the Winter Equestrian Festival, and more that we'll get into. And of course, Carly McCutcheon, just one spot below Bailey in that Under 25 Grand Prix last week, but she has also been a past winner of the Equitation Championship here, as well as taking a win in the USEF Hunt Seat Medal. And of course, she took a top honor as well in the Maclay Championships last year. There's a lot of synergy between these three that we would like to get into. But before that, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the ride that we saw from McLean in last week's Challenge Cup and in our Grand Prix. And maybe we can get into a little bit, since it is an equitation week, as to what a great rider McLean is and how equitation actually plays into, even today, decades removed from his equitation in junior years, now continuing to really demonstrate incredible equitation. Speak freely on the round as we watch this victory aboard Contagious in that $215,000 Grand Prix. Brian, what do you think about this ride?
This was an amazing round. Both of his rounds last Saturday night were fabulous. I think, you talk about McLean, and everybody can say the same thing, that he's, one of the best ever in the sport. Certainly in America and all over the world. And he's also a major equitation finals winner when he was a junior. And you can see a lot of the things that we work on in the past and we work on now sort of carrying through into top sport, especially with him. He's so well balanced and kind of appropriate with his body all over the course. And that's something that's very pervasive, I think, in the equitation ring.
Do you think that in the time since you were in the equitation ranks, you're still an incredibly stylish rider, of course.
Time ago.
But do you? It sure was. But do you think that since that time, your equitation has dropped off at all as far as your position, the way you ride, or do you think that you really put a lot of focus into that still because you know that equitation is going to make you more effective as a rider?
Yeah, I think that we train so much when we're younger on those basics, and that's one very important part with regard to equitation. And those things that you work on throughout your junior career really follow through into your later career. And then when you see how much more effective you can be based on where your body is and your timing and your track and all the things that you're really focusing on in the equitation, you can see how it really is a very good starting block for a high-level career.
Luke, you have now, of course, since your junior years have wrapped up, and you've had a lot of wins, of course, during that time, have now advanced into the big jumper ring, and you actually had a couple of wins yourself in the open jumper divisions. Would you agree with what Brian has said here? Like, you're still focusing on your equitation, your position, your balance? Are you still trying to sort of portray that equitation picture? Is it just as important to you?
Yeah, for me, the way I think about equitation is that it's deliberate, effective, and correct riding. So sometimes it's easy to let thinking equitation turn into ineffective riding, when in reality the way we need to be sort of approaching it is that it's deliberate, correct, and effective. So I think, moving into the higher level, the more you can have that sort of built into your brain, muscle memory, correct, proper equitation, it plays a big part at the higher level, and I'm starting to find that out now.
Yeah, and in practice, and it's resulting in a number of blue ribbons already for you this season, and some pretty big classes that maybe we'll get into discussion about later on. Carly, how about you? You, of course, were runner-up in that under-25 Grand Prix here the other day, and of course just a spot there below Bailey. Are you also still you're of course the most recent coming out of the junior ranks? You're really still working through that. Would you also reflect that equitation is extremely important? Do you think about it every day, even when you're in the jumper ring?
Definitely. I think they said it best, really. It can be a bit more difficult to think about your position, and sometimes in the higher level jumpers, especially with the different types of horses, they're not as broke all the time or just well trained as the equitation horses, so it's not as easy to kind of sit there. But I think Luke said it best, being effective is the most important thing, and the equitation ring really teaches you how to do that. And I think, going forward and collecting, and that's kind of carries over to the higher level jumper ring. So I think it's definitely very important.
Well, let's take a look here. We've actually got your round from last week aboard Coco Mercedes, came runner-up there. Can you maybe take us on a little bit of a tour through this round as you're watching? Just a quick overview.
She's a very special horse. She's got her own way of going, kind of what she says goes, so I try and stay out of her way more than anything and just try and smooth it out as best that I can. She loves to get to the jumps, that's for sure, and then she manages to clear them with her own style, definitely, but I really appreciate her try, and I think that it makes me more confident in the ring as well.
Yeah, you all have been a very dynamic combination here so far throughout the season. And of course, it was Bailey McKeever that took the top finish there last week. And we'll maybe get into a little bit of that with her winning round there. Here is Formidable. And of course, it's interesting to note, of course, that Bailey rides with McLean. And so she's sort of mirroring what McLean himself does. What do you think about this, Luke, as you're watching Bailey make her way around here in the under 25? Obviously, that's a lot of pressure in a class like that, isn't it?
Yeah, like you said, it's no coincidence that she won the day after the McLean won the 4-star Under the Lights the night before. The riding is very reminiscent. It's effective. The position is very similar in a lot of ways. It's effective riding, but they also get it done. So.
All right. Well, that under 25 competition, of course, was the culmination of the season in the under 25 ranks. And when it was all said and done, Frances Derwin was our overall winner of the series. Competition happening all the way throughout the week. And we had a chance last week to catch up with the under 25 champion of the series. So why don't we take a look at that interview with Frances Derwin. Caught up a little bit with Andrew Bournes during last week's WEF Weekly during week 10. And of course, Andrew, familiar with Frances from back in Ireland. Frances did make his way back home immediately following that under 25 championship win the other day. But of course, as Andrew mentioned in last week's broadcast, Frances, of course, comes from a very equestrian background and grew up around this. So of course, it comes naturally to him as well. And that's coming out, obviously, as you can see, in the performances that have earned him a big championship. But here we are again, shifting our focus back from the jumper ring. Why don't we go ahead and really get into the equitation ranks? Because this week, as I mentioned, is the WEF Equitation Championship presented by NetJets. It is a fairly straightforward format. All riders go in the first round. The top 12 qualify to come back in the second round. And then round 3 is when we see the top 4 come back, and that's based on the combined scores from round 1 and round 2. Several panels will be judging in the arena, but to me, one of the most interesting things about this format is the fact that you actually get judged in the schooling area as well. Does that add any extra pressure when you all are out there? I mean, it's not really like you're going to get a huge amount of points from that schooling area scoring, but it could have an effect, and you want to put your best foot forward from the very beginning of when you arrive. So, Luke, how was that when you took your win back in 22?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're more looking for your ability to know what's right for your horse in that situation. They can give you either plus or minus 2 unless they've changed it, anywhere from 0 to plus 2 or minus 2. So I think kind of having that in mind is just trusting that you're going to know what's best for your horse, what's in the ring, sort of general schooling area etiquette, rules with the boots, things like that, not jumping the jump backwards. Knowing the rules, what's right for your horse, generally you can have faith that you're going to get the points for that.
Right, and they can also take points away if they see you doing something maybe inappropriate there in the warm-up area, and there's no trainer to tell you yes or no on that. We're actually taking a look at your ride back from 2022, Luke. Did you have a good feeling when you finished this up that you were going to clinch the win?
I did. I knew that the scores from my first 2 rounds put me well ahead, and then the test suited my horse quite well. So I felt pretty confident going in, even though the other testers were great riders. Also, Augusta Iwasaki, I remember, was second. But I did feel confident with my scores going in, and Jamaica felt as good as ever that day, so it was a good feeling.
Well, a salute to you from a couple of years back. I know that was the first of many really big nights for you and your entire crew that helps you out in the equitation ring. Your mom, your dad, obviously quite proud of the moment as well. Carly, of course, took that victory last year 2023. I would float the same question to you. Does it put any extra pressure on when you get to the warm-up area knowing that you're going to be watched like a hawk out in that warm-up area?
Definitely. I actually I got ready a bit early in the second round. I got +2 in the first round, and then I got a little ahead of myself in the second round. Forgot to switch the flags for my last oxer. Ended up getting a -2, so a little added pressure to put in a solid round. And I was able to come back in third for the test, and I really wanted to show off to the best of my ability. And I really didn't know where the results were going to end up. At first, I mean, I thought I was third because that's the ribbon that I got, but they re-announced and ended up winning.
Well, that was a lucky turn of events there
Yeah.
for sure. And do you feel like this was in any way a way to bolster your career? Was it a launching pad of any sort? Obviously, you've already had some wins prior to that. You've had many since then. Did this give you more confidence for the future?
I think so. I think any sort of equitation championship or championship of any sort really is a great experience to get in the ring with that pressure and get the experience under pressure as many times as you can do it. I think is important, and I've really learned a lot each time I've had the opportunity to do that.
And Brianne, maybe we'll shift to you because as we were sort of getting ready to go on air here, we were talking a little bit about the fact that this Equitation Championship has been around for a while, but it's changed a bit since you competed in that Equitation Championship. It used to be over in what is the Grand Hunter Ring, and it was on the grass. Am I mistaken?
It was a sand. It was sand. The ring was sand, but there was a big bank up the side that everybody used to sit on.
Right.
It was the same format, same idea. It was called the Ronnie Much back in my day. But I remember everyone being so excited to do the class, and it's funny doing it now as a trainer. At the time, as a rider, you're so nervous about the schooling area and doing it without your trainer and making sure you don't mess up and make any small mistakes that can be very costly. And now as a trainer, I always find that it's a completely different experience, and you think, okay, I hope they got everything we've been working on, and I hope they are comfortable in the schooling area and they know what to do if something happens, and just keep the focus on having fun, but also staying very competitive and being very serious in the class as well. It's a hard combination of emotions, I think.
It's almost like being a parent and having your children sort of
Completely.
fly the nest and go off
Completely.
to school, isn't it, a little bit?
Totally.
Like, I've taught them everything I know. Now they got to go
Yeah.
out and prove that they
Yeah.
really, really know it. And so with that in mind, have you given any words of advice, I mean, in preparation for that to any of your riders?
Definitely. We always do at least 1 or 2 practice rounds in the season. Usually it's either this week or last week, leading up to this championship, and we let the students do sort of a mock trial of what's going to happen tomorrow night. So we do I'd be in the schooling area, but we do you tell your groom which jumps you want to jump and when and how, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Right. Well, we're looking forward to that. It's been rescheduled just a bit because they're expecting some serious weather coming up on the weekend, and so it's actually moved to tomorrow night now. Hopefully that weather doesn't hit us at all, and we have a great week throughout. But again, equitation is a big focus here this week, but that's of course not all that is in store for us here. We've already mentioned last week the Challenge Cup and the Grand Prix win taken by McLean Ward. We've already talked about the fact that, of course, he continues even to this day to demonstrate that incredible equitation and to pass on all of that knowledge to his own riders, and we've seen evidence of that in the Bailey McKeever win last week in the under-25 Grand Prix. But let's take another look now at what's coming up in the jumper front. We've got the meter 50 final all season long. We've got meter 50 classics taking place here throughout the Winter Equestrian Festival, and of course points accrue based on placings throughout the tour. As you can see, the standings right now have Aaron Ballard on top, McLean Ward holding second, Shane Sweetenham in third. I should mention to you that while they do have those top 3 positions, those riders are not with us here this week. and likely will not be a part of that Meter 50 Classic as they're off competing in team events elsewhere here in the country. Natalie Dean, however, as far as I know, will be a part of our Meter 50 Classic, so maybe it's an opportunity for her, currently with 227 points, to move up in those rankings. Of course, Kean O'Connor, Emily Cantor, Laura Kraut also away, Richard Vogel, Jadena, and Niall Nesser rounding out the top 10 placings. But what an honor it would be to make it to the top of the Meter 50 Challenge Series or Classic Series that's going to be taking place here for the final week. And with that, we're looking forward to some great jumper action. But you know, as we were watching, Luke, you're around there in the 2022 win in the WEF Equitation Championship. You talked about confidence in your horse a little bit, and I figure it's a good time for us to maybe talk about some of the questions that we've gotten in from some of our Instagram followers. So I think we'll kick off with Luke here, and I just might want to ask, who is the favorite horse that you've ever ridden? I know it's a tough question because you've ridden a lot, and maybe you've got favorites in a number of different categories, but if you had to pick one, who would that be? Who is the favorite horse that you have ever ridden?
Like you said, that's so tough to say because I've been so lucky to ride so many amazing horses with so many different people. But if I had to pick one, it would be Jamaica for sure, just due to the fact that I took care of him myself and then I had so many hours with him, not only in the saddle, but when you can spend that much time with the horse, it turns into a lot stronger relationship. So I think in terms of that, I'd have to pick Jamaica. Plus, we had a lot of success together, and he taught me what it was like to walk into a class and feel like you can win confidently every time, feel like you have a chance.
There's a lot to be said for horsemanship in that situation. I know that Jamaica came back to your barn there at North Run and needed a little sort of rehab. Maybe was not in the best of sorts when he came back, but you get a lot of credit for bringing Jamaica back around and really not just physically but mentally and emotionally. You all sort of grew together during that year, didn't you?
Definitely. We spent a lot of time together, right, from early in the morning, sometimes late at night, all throughout the day. So I think when it comes to a relationship like that, it's hard to replace it. So.
Well, let me ask you this now, Luke. Another question that came in from one of our Instagram followers. What is the best advice that you could give to an aspiring equitation rider?
The best advice? I think something not only for equitation riders, but riders of all levels, I guess, is to be aware of the mental game and to always sort of be working on that. That's something that I obsess with a little bit because naturally I'm not a nervous rider, but I always got nervous for a long time, and I'm much better about it now, but due to a lot of hard work and speaking with a sports psychologist, reading books by people, athletes that wrote about their experiences. So always working on the mental game and the sort of psychological aspect of this, because it's a sport of minute details. It's tiny adjustments, and because of that, it's very mental. So if you're not in the right headspace, your performance is going to take a dip.
Absolutely, and I have to say as well, I know that's the way you've been brought up. Both your mom and your dad are all about that, having the right outlook on things, and I know your mom's all about self-improvement, probably instilled that in you as well. So, of course, that brings us to the question of pressure. Would you say that pressure makes you better or worse as a rider?
I think pressure can make anyone better or worse. Like I was saying, it's a constant effort, it's a constant improvement to be working mentally on how you handle pressure. Now, I would like to think that at this point, I've found a lot of ways, learning about myself, to make pressure into an advantage for me. But certainly there have been days in the past where, viewing the crowd or thinking about who's there or what will happen if I mess up has, been to my detriment. I think it's still a constant effort for me. I go through my little routines. Knowing myself, I think I've found ways now, with experience in equitation championships and some jumper championships now also, the experience plays a big part, but now I've figured out ways to deal with that and to make it work to my advantage.
And that's definitely proven itself out. I would imagine the first time you stepped into a ring after you came out of your junior years and became a professional and you got into a class with 70 or 80 horses, you thought, oh my goodness. But you've obviously demonstrated the ability to deal with that pressure with the wins that we talked about earlier here in those meter 40 classes just a couple of weeks back. Carly, we've also got some questions for you from some of our Instagram followers. So we'll start off with this one. How did you get your eye to be so consistent? Obviously, some of our viewers here have watched you perform, and they feel like you really know how to get to the jumps right on the mark. So how do you get your eye to be so consistent?
Well, not always so consistent for sure, but a really great piece of advice that I got was from Lily Keenan, that you can learn something from everyone. And so for me, I really like to watch the riders that I would like to replicate, like Brian or McLean, and watching them and really see what they do to get to the jump and, like you say, kind of find that ideal distance. And so I think for me, I just like to watch the people that I want to be like and really study the people that I would like to ride like and see what works best for me. I think a lot of things that I notice is just, like with Brianne, she has a great feel of the horses, and the horses love her and the horses love McLean. And I think that being able to kind of meet your horses in the middle a little bit is something that's really important, and just finding what works best for you.
It's not all about control all the time, is it? Sometimes it's about figuring out what your horse can do, and like you said, meet them where they are, and just sort of adapt, mold to what they can do and just make the best out of their ability, I guess. Second question, what do you love about equitation?
I always loved not even the showing as much of part of it. I really like the days in between, putting in the lessons. TJ's lessons were always a lot of fun for me, and really learning what we can do with the horses. And we'll do 8 sometimes in a 5-stride line, or you know, training the horses and really truly making them better, and seeing how the horses and the partnership gets better over time. I think that's a really, really cool thing.
Okay, and now third and final question from our Instagram viewers here. How do you train your horse to be better at the equitation? We maybe already touched on this a little bit a minute ago here, but how do you train your horse to be better at the equitation? Do you think there's a key element to that?
I don't know. I think finding the program that works best for you and the partnership. I was very fortunate that I feel like I had a very good partnership with my equitation horse, Choco Star, and that makes a big difference for me. I was confident in my program and my system and my people and my horses, and I think that really makes all the difference if you're in a system that you believe in.
Okay, well now Brianne, you'll be put on the spot a little bit here. We also had some questions coming in from our Instagram viewers for you. How do you think that equitation impacted your career? We're sort of touching on some of these points that we've sort of gone over a little bit already, but just in detail, what do you think that equitation did for your career? Obviously, you've come out now, you've become an incredibly respected international rider and trainer. Carly herself just mentioned that she watches you ride and you're an example to her. So how do you think equitation impacted your career?
It had a huge impact on my career. I think it really was a springboard for me. You know, starting with just the basics and the training and what I learned, and then being able to sort of micro experience larger championships at all the equitation finals and specialty classes that we've already talked about. It just really, if you can use equitation the way it was intended to be used, which is really as a building block, the kind of the experience knows no bounds. And I really felt that as soon as I finished my equitation career, I was ready for the next step. And I use a lot of the tools that I was trained on and struggled with every day since I left the equitation ring.
All right, second question here. How did the pressure of major television broadcast affect your performance? If you were around in the era of 2007, 2008, you may know that Brianne and many of her peers in that age group were the subject of a major television broadcast throughout the course of the equitation season. And of course, you ended up being the centerpiece of that after you won the McClay Championship. So how did all of that pressure, knowing that you're going to be watched by millions on television, impact or affect your performance?
You know, a little bit like Luke touched on before, I think pressure can be a major advantage. You know, as detrimental as it can be to a lot of people, being involved with that broadcast, it actually took, funny enough, a lot of pressure away because it was very distracting. It was very different, and we were focused a little bit on another side of the sport, which was being filmed. And I thought I had a great experience. I thought it was really fun. And then when we got down to the actual final, I kind of forgot about the extra pressure of having the opportunity to be the first person to win the 4. Kind of hit me later, I have to say. It was a wonderful experience, and I think that the slight distraction definitely played to my advantage. And I mean, we loved it. It was totally weird and totally different, but we worked with great crews, and they weren't in the way. They just were part of the fun and involved, and it was great.
Right. There was quite the buzz in the air all season long then when all that filming was going on, and I definitely added something to the season back in 2008. I should say, though, that at the time we probably didn't have nearly as much streaming going on in the show jumping or the equitation world, and pretty much everywhere you go now has cameras on hand, and they're streaming to audiences everywhere.
We had watch parties.
They have watch parties, yeah.
They were.
But you better be able to handle the pressure at this point, because no matter where you are, and this is sort of the case for all aspects of life at this point, you're going to be broadcast somewhere because there's just cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
But going back even further than your 2008 success there, 2007, 2008, 2009, I want to go further back to when these two started. Many people may not realize, but they both grew up in Texas and actually have known each other since they were very young. Both of you started riding with your grandmother, Colleen, right? Are there any lessons that you can remember that Colleen gave you back in the day that still stick with you now?
Go ahead.
Either one of you.
One thing I definitely remember is we certainly charted a lot of jumps. We charted a lot of jumps. That's at least it was at the time, but that was a big thing at Colleen's. Is she loves trot jumps, and there's trot jumps in the equitation. So that definitely served to my benefit at least, because I was never a good trot jumper, but but I've charted a lot of them. So I think figuring out some tricks for that certainly helped.
Was she a bit of a drill sergeant? Did she make you go without stirrups quite often, Carly?
Not in that sense. I mean, we had our stirrups.
Think carefully before you answer. She's definitely watching.
I have a feeling Grandma's watching right now. Yeah.
Carly, we went without stirrups on our own accord, bareback all the time. So.
Yeah,
Right.
we ride bareback a lot. And did she make you ride on the lunge line ever, or just me?
I think it was just you.
Yeah,
I
we rode
could
on the
steer.
lunge line a lot. But yeah, a lot of trot jumps, trot in, canter out. She'd have us do bareback and.
Well, there's a lot to be said for the fact that you both started, first of all, in Texas. I would imagine most people around the world would equate Texas to a Western sort of an atmosphere. But not just the two of you, but a lot of great riders have come out of Texas. And of course, we've seen that in Young Rider Championships. We've seen that at the Prix d'Estates in Harrisburg. Texas has been doing quite well. But there's also a lot to be said for the fact, again, that you both started under Colleen. And all of these years later, I know I brought this up in the press conference when we finished up the medal finals. You all have had in successive years the Equitation Championship here in 22 and 23, Luke, then Carly at WEF. The next year, of course, was Luke's medal win at the end of the 2022 season, and Carly just got the medal win in 2023. And then Luke ends up getting the Talent Search victory after getting second place last year, took the Talent Search victory in 2023, and then Carly was just one spot behind. And you all have also been championships in successive years at Devon. It's pretty incredible, sort of the synergy and the similarity between your two sets of results coming up to today. And hopefully that success continues on for both of you. Continues on as well for you, Breon. We look forward to seeing what all of you have in store for us. And of course, we're looking forward to a great week of competition here. And as I mentioned, we've been talking a lot about equitation because the Equitation Championships are in fact set to take place here tomorrow night, an adjusted schedule due to weather that's expected to come in. Hopefully things stay nice and we get sunshine all week long, but in preparation for the potential, we're going to have that tomorrow night here, week 11, and the WEF Equitation Championship will of course also have the Meter 50 Classic final. That's all going to come to a head here this week, and oh so much more Grand Prix action taking place under the lights on Saturday as well. So we look forward to all of that. And IDA Development, of course, our sponsor of that 4-star Grand Prix taking place here this weekend. One more thanks again to all of our sponsors, including IDA Development, Dodd Technologies, you can find online at doddtechnologies.com, and of course U.S. Equestrian Federation and USEF Network, who help us to provide you with this broadcast. It's going to be an incredible week once again here at the Winter Equestrian Festival. We are in the home stretch. Week 11 is upon us, and we hope you'll continue to tune in to our broadcasts right here. We look forward to seeing you in the days to come. For all of us here on the desk at the WEF Weekly, we thank you for being with us, and again, see you next time.